Right then, let's talk about money, specifically the American dollar, the greenback, the buck, the almighty dollar, the big cheese of global finance, the cornerstone of international trade and investment. For decades, it's been the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. It's everywhere. From bustling markets in Asia to high-tech hubs in Europe. You buy oil with it, the lifeblood of modern economies. You trade goods with it. From electronics to textiles, the dollar is the go-to currency. It's the default setting for global commerce, the standard by which others are measured. But like a middle-aged rock star contemplating a comeback tour, people are starting to ask, is the dollar losing its mojo? Is it still the king of the hill? The global financial landscape is looking a bit like a teenager's bedroom, messy, unpredictable, and with strange new things popping up all over the place. Cryptocurrencies, trade wars, and shifting alliances. The question is whether the US dollar, that bedrock of the post-war economic order, is about to be dethroned. Is it facing a serious challenge? Or perhaps more realistically, will it just have to start sharing its rather large, ornate throne with a few other up-and-comers? The euro, the yuan, or even digital currencies? The dominance of the dollar affects everything. From the price of gas to the cost of international travel. It influences the price of your petrol, the cost of that fancy imported cheese you like, and even the stability of your pension. Your everyday life is tied to its value. Think of it as the sun in the financial solar system, the center around which everything else orbits. If it starts to dim, or worse, if another celestial body tries to take its place, well, things could get a bit chaotic for all the little planets like, us. The ripple effects would be felt worldwide, so understanding what's going on with the dollar is less about being a financial wizard and more about understanding the world we live in. It's about grasping the bigger picture. And right now, that world is changing faster than ever before. So why now? Why is everyone suddenly gossiping about the dollar's future? First, there was the global pandemic. It threw economies into a spin. Governments printed money like it was going out of fashion, and supply chains got more tangled than your Christmas lights in July. Then you've got the geopolitical equivalent of a bar fight in a china shop. The conflict in Ukraine led to massive sanctions against Russia, a major global energy supplier. This sent a loud message to other countries. If you fall out with the US, your access to the global financial system could be switched off. All these events have combined to create a perfect storm of doubt. So, how did the US dollar become the top dog in the first place? What were the key events and decisions that led to its rise? After World War II, much of the world was, to put it mildly, a bit broken. Europe and Asia were in ruins, their economies shattered and their currencies unstable. The US, on the other hand, emerged relatively unscathed, with a booming industrial base and most of the world's gold. This unique position of strength allowed the US to take a leading role in rebuilding the global economy. This led to the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1944. Representatives from 44 allied nations gathered to create a new international monetary system. The world's leading nations pegged their currencies to the US dollar, which itself was convertible to gold. This established the dollar as the central pillar of global finance. The dollar became the world's reserve currency, a status that brought immense economic and political power to the United States. Even after President Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard in 1971, the dollar's dominance largely continued. The world had already become accustomed to using the dollar for international trade and finance. Today, the dollar's status is pretty well entrenched. It remains the go-to currency for global transactions and investments. Most international trade, especially in crucial commodities like oil, is priced and settled in dollars. This further cements its role in the global economy. Central banks around the world hold vast quantities of dollars as foreign exchange reserves. This practice provides stability and liquidity to the global financial system. US financial markets are the deepest, most liquid, and arguably the most transparent in the world. This attracts investors from all corners of the globe. This creates a powerful network effect. Everyone uses the dollar because everyone else uses the dollar. It's a self-reinforcing cycle that keeps the dollar at the center of global finance. And let's be honest, this setup has been pretty sweet for America. The US enjoys significant economic advantages due to the dollar's global dominance. It can borrow money more cheaply because there's always a demand for US Treasury bonds. This demand keeps interest rates lower than they might otherwise be. So while the grumbles are getting louder, dislodging a currency this deeply embedded is like trying to remove a particularly stubborn limpet from a rock. The dollar's position is secure, at least for now. Now, despite the dollar's entrenched position, there are a few plucky contenders warming up on the sidelines. The most talked about is China's currency, the Yuan. China, being the world's second-largest economy, thinks its currency deserves a bigger role on the world stage. They're pushing for more trade to be settled in yuan, and have launched yuan-denominated oil futures contracts. Then you have the wild cards, cryptocurrencies. Proponents will tell you they're the future, decentralized and beyond the control of any single government. However, they also come with terrifying volatility and regulatory headaches. The truth is, each of these alternatives faces an uphill battle. So if the dollar is so mighty, why are we even having this conversation? The US dollar has long been considered the world's reserve currency, a symbol of economic stability and strength, but recent events have caused some to question its invincibility. First up, US government debt. The numbers are astronomical. The national debt has been climbing at an alarming rate, raising concerns about the country's fiscal health. If investors start to worry about America's ability to pay its debts, they might become less keen on holding dollars. Then there's inflation. Rising prices erode the purchasing power of the dollar, making it less attractive. We've all felt the pinch recently. Everyday items are costing more, and this inflationary pressure is a significant concern for both consumers and investors. If people lose faith in the dollar's ability to hold its purchasing power, they'll start looking for alternatives. Cryptocurrencies and other fiat currencies are becoming more appealing. Geopolitical shifts are also playing a massive role. Tensions between major powers can influence global confidence in the dollar. The world isn't as US-centric as it was 30 years ago. Global trade dynamics are shifting and new economic alliances are forming. You've got rising powers like China and India flexing their economic muscles. These countries are increasingly influential in global markets. The way the US has used financial sanctions has spooked some countries. They worry about being overly dependent on the dollar. They see it as a tool of American foreign policy and are actively looking for ways to de-dollarize. This trend is gaining momentum. Finally, there's a general sense that the global financial system might not be perfectly suited to the multipolar world of the 21st century. The existing system is being questioned. The dollar's dominance reflects a particular moment in history, and history has a habit of moving on. As the world evolves, so too must its financial systems. The desire for a more diversified international monetary system is growing. Economists and policymakers are exploring new frameworks. This doesn't necessarily mean the dollar is doomed to collapse overnight, but the pressure is mounting. The future of the dollar is uncertain, and the world is watching closely. Alright, so the dollar's got a few issues, but here's the multi-trillion-dollar question: what, realistically, could replace it? The entire global financial system is built around the dollar. It's like trying to change the engine of an airplane while it's still in mid-flight. Let's consider the main contender, China's yuan. For a currency to be truly global, people need to trust it. China faces a credibility gap in the eyes of many international investors. What about cryptocurrencies? Bitcoin as the world's reserve. The volatility is just too wild for mainstream global commerce. Stablecoins are more plausible, but many are pegged to the US dollar, and then there's the sheer inertia. The dollar system works, more or less. Now, if you could be a fly on the wall at one of those swanky financial conferences, what would you hear them saying about the dollar's future? Many economists will tell you that while the dollar's share of global reserves and trade might gradually decline, a dramatic collapse is pretty unlikely in the near future. Professor Barry Eichengreen suggests we might move towards a more multipolar currency world. Then you have the slightly more bearish commentators. They look at the soaring US debt and the increasing willingness of countries like China and Russia to challenge the dollar's hegemony. Some, like investor Ray Dalio, have warned that the US could be in the later stages of a debt cycle that historically ends badly for dominant empires and their currencies. However, even the biggest dollar skeptics usually admit that there's no obvious successor ready to step in immediately. The Eurozone has its unity issues, China has its transparency and control issues, and cryptocurrencies are still too much of a gamble. So, the consensus is often one of cautious concern. Yet. Right, let's try and pull all these threads together, shall we? On one hand, the US dollar is still the undisputed king of the currency castle. Its markets are vast and liquid, and despite everything, there's still a significant amount of trust in US institutions. This isn't going to change overnight. However, the grumbling in the cheap seats is getting louder. The dollar's dominance is facing challenges from multiple angles. The rise of China and its ambitions for the yuan is a significant long-term factor. The desire of many nations to reduce their dependence on a single currency is creating a slow but steady push for diversification. The most likely scenario isn't a dramatic dollar collapse. It's more likely a gradual erosion of its dominance. So, after all that, you might be thinking, why should I care about the future of the US dollar? The status of the dollar can have very real effects on your everyday life, your savings, and the broader economy you live in. If the dollar were to significantly weaken, the cost of imported goods could go up. If you're in a country outside the US, a weaker dollar might make American goods cheaper for you, but it could also mean your own currency strengthens. If you have investments, particularly international ones, currency fluctuations can have a big impact on their value. The stability of the global financial system relies heavily on the dollar's role. If that role becomes uncertain, it could lead to increased volatility in markets. A less dominant dollar might also mean the US finds it more expensive to finance its debt. So, what's the call to action here? Stay informed. The world of money is evolving, and understanding the basics of what's driving these changes is the first step to navigating whatever comes next.